Hey, welcome. How y'all doing today? You guys ready? I'm ready. All right. So, we are here today on another Financial New. Let's discuss some things we have programmed for ourselves today. I believe we were talking about the World Economic Forum, Global Economy Outlook today. Let's see what we got going on. All right, you guys hear that? No, I don't think you can hear that. Let's get that properly sorted out. All right. Session will begin shortly. Let's speed that up. Guess what? I was back. 10 minutes. 10 minutes and 51 seconds these men take to get online. I guess I gotta wait for everyone to come in on the Zoom. All right, let's see what this is all about.
Names. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the grand finale. We end Davos on a high note here, and I'm so excited and honored to be here. My name is Sarah Eisen. I'm a host at CNBC, and we are going to have the conversation everybody's been waiting for, the global debate and the global outlook on the economy. Obviously, we have a tremendous lineup here. We have Faisal El-Abrahim. He's the Minister for Economy and Planning in Saudi Arabia. His Excellency, thank you. Larry Fink is the CEO and founder of BlackRock. Christine Lagarde is the president of the ECB. We have Kristalina Georgieva, who is the head of the IMF. And we have the president of Singapore, President Tharman Shanmugaratnam. Thank you all for joining us. You know, this Davos has been very interesting. Larry, there's so much optimism around President Trump and pro-growth policies and the U.S. outlook. I sort of wonder, as an asset manager and a risk manager, like, should we take the other side? Are you worried that everyone's too excited right now? Larry, got me?
It's hard to hear.
Oh, it's hard to hear.
This is why we are putting those things.
Oh, okay. I was just asking you if there's too much optimism around the U.S. outlook right now and whether that was worrisome.
Well, welcome everybody. Thank you, Sarah. Now I could hear you. Is there too much optimism in the U.S.? No. But that being said, there's risk in every economy. I can say much more forcibly, there's too much pessimism in Europe. For somebody who's been pessimistic in Europe for like 10 years, if I had my number one observation this week in Davos, the pessimism I've never felt, the pessimism to be larger and more profound. And I believe it's probably time to be investing back into Europe, focusing on it. I see all the problems in Europe, but I do believe the pessimism is too large. There's many things it needs to do. It needs a banking union and a capital markets union, which I could talk about later on. But back to the United States. I think all the ingredients for the United States it will be the continuation of its strength, the foundation of its capital markets. Any entrepreneur, any small company, any large company can find capital. And that foundation of capital raising allows much more entrepreneurialism, much more creativity. And so I believe the U.S. has the ability, because of its strength of its capital markets, which is solely really underappreciated, allows it to rebuild itself, change directions, modify faster than any economy in the world. And I do believe the economy obviously changes depending on the political party and the president, but the reality is the economy is larger than any one political party or any one president. Obviously, they could be additive to any economy. And, you know, President Trump's policies, if we were able to unlock private capital and put private capital to work faster, easier, with less regulation, less time for permitting, it would allow the U.S. to become less dependent on its own fiscal problems. And
So what I'm going to interject is they're going to find money out of nowhere to inject into this market. They've been seasoned or holding for a while.
So those are some of the issues that could be worked out. So no, there's not too much optimism in the U.S., and there's probably more to be optimistic here in Europe.
President Lagarde, I bet you didn't expect to kick off the panel with a vote of confidence for Europe, because what we've been hearing here a lot is Europe's economy is underperforming, the Trump factor is going to be bad for Europe. How have you digested all of this?
Well, good morning to everyone. But I was going to say to Larry that if ever you look for a pro bono job, come and join us in Europe, because you advocate Europe in a beautiful way. So, given where I am, the fact that I'm in my quiet period before a monetary policy week decision coming up soon, I would just like to underscore what Europe is good at. And if I look at the scorecard at the moment, whether you look at debt to GDP, about 80%, overall deficit for the euro area, about 3%, inflation, latest reading 2.4, and strong confidence that it's going down rather than up. Interest rates, 3%. Huge amount of talent, huge amount of savings, and a big wake-up call that is really calling the Europeans to action. So if the European leaders can actually get their act together, respond to this wake-up call and existential threat that can be identified, then I think that there is a huge potential for Europe to respond to the call.
Well,
So I'm also pretty optimistic. I'm realist about the points that Larry made. We need banking union, we need capital market union, we need to keep the talent at home, we need to keep the savings at home, and maybe it's also time to import a few of the talents that would be disenchanted for one reason or the other from another side of the sea.
Just quickly, why do you call it an existential threat? Why is it existential right now?
Why is it? Well, because as Larry was suggesting, if you talk to the CEOs, if you talk to the corporate world at the moment, those that are making major investments.
Fink is waiting for regulations to allow him to use his private capital to infuse into the market.
Decisions, they are not very upbeat right now. And when you ask them why they're not, they're making reference to the price of energy. Fair enough, but energy costs are going down as the non-fossil energy is going up in Europe in a significant way. When you consider that electricity production in the euro area, at least, is now 70% non-fossil originated. They complain about the excessive red tape and the excessive bureaucracy. That's the wake-up call that we Europeans, those in policy-making places, have to really take to heart and respond fast to. You know, there was this great incentive to go and invest in the United States because of the Inflation Reduction Act and the significant subsidies that were going to be given to those who invested in the US. I think the IRA has essentially been removed and that any subsidies under the IRA will not be paid out. So people are going to have to rethink with the prism of confidence, with the prism of cost, as is often the case, and the prism of opportunities. And there is no question that what is happening outside is a challenge, but it's also a big opportunity for revisiting and deciding whether or not Europe wants to be a key player. But I'm contending that it has the talent, and it has the means, and it has the ambition.
Well, we're going to talk about the IRA, and I know President Tarman has a lot to say about industrial policy, but first, MD Georgieva, if you could just give us a global overview right now, because you guys just put out your big World Economic Outlook, and yes, while there's a lot of optimism and solid growth in the US, it's a little lopsided around the world.
Well, great to be on this panel. We published our projections for 25 and 26 just before the forum, and what they paint is a nice picture with some undertones. Nice picture because we project growth at 3.3% this year, and next, this is a slight upgrade for 2025. But under the hood of this average number, we have very strong performance for the US. We actually upgraded growth projections for the US by 0.5 percentage point, from 2.2 to 2.7, and we have sort of not great European performance, and then we have the rest of the world more or less a little bit up, a little bit down. The most important message I have for the audience is to ask the question, why? Why growth in the United States is so strong? Why growth in Europe is somewhat underwhelming? Why the emerging markets are not doing fantastically well? And the answer is primarily in the differences in productivity growth. The US is marching ahead with high productivity because capital markets allocate money to dynamic firms, because technology turns into business investment and then it grows into company fast, and because the US has, relatively speaking, abundant, relatively cheap energy. When we look, and then productivity in the United States, year after year after year is close to a percentage point. You look at the rest of the world, advanced economies dropped in productivity vis-a-vis pre-pandemic times from over 1% productivity growth, and it pushes growth up, to meager 0.2% now. Even more worrisome, in emerging markets, productivity dropped from 2.5% to 0.7%, and in low-income countries from 2 to 0. So my first message is, the world is changing very rapidly. We are experiencing a tremendous technological transformation. Capital has to have long legs and go where it would make the biggest difference. And you look at capital, where did capital go with its long legs? It went to the United States. And if countries want to move forward, they have to be very aggressive in opening up opportunities for entrepreneurship. And yes, Europe has to have deep capital markets. It has to have a unified market that makes it possible to compete. And I want to say, I'm a European, I'm a proud European. As a European, I want to make an observation in terms of culture. The United States has a culture of confidence. Europe has a culture of modesty. When I first went to the United States, I went there, if something is done really fantastically well, my parent would say, not too bad. That was the highest praise. And in the US, you just move your legs and you're fantastic. You blink and you're great. So My great. So my advice to my fellow Europeans is more confidence.
I knew you guys didn't hear that. I do apologize for pausing the video without talking, but I'm just shocked that she said what she said in terms of how you praise your children, let's say to start, makes a difference in their outlook as adults. So what I'm saying that is, we may overlook the things our children do and just pass them off as just whatever, but not knowing the psychological makeup behind that, we are setting them up or we're hindering their ability to progress based on how we celebrate their achievements. That's big. That's some psychological right there. All right.
Move your legs and you're fantastic. You blink and you're great. So my advice to my fellow Europeans is more confidence. Believe in yourself, and most importantly, tell others that you do.
Good message. President Harman, you know, everybody's wondering how, you know, the Trump presidency, which is so focused on economics and has so many changes from the prior regime, is going to change the outlook for their respective regions and economies. How are you thinking about it for Southeast Asia, emerging markets, the regions that you follow?
Well, first let me say, and I don't want to be a spoiler here, if you look at all the evidence on what ordinary people think and feel, they're not feeling good in the US, in Europe, everywhere in the world. Confidence is down, optimism is down, trust is down. So our real task is, how do we rebuild the bases for optimism in today's world? We're not going back to the era when the Bretton Woods institutions were formed. We're not going back to an era where Henry Morgenthau, the US Treasury Secretary, said in Bretton Woods, prosperity is indivisible. Just think about that. Prosperity is indivisible, meaning I can't prosper unless you are prospering. No nation, even the largest, will prosper unless the rest of the world is prospering. We're not going back to that era. It's past us. It may have rested on a moment in time when the US had an unassailable lead and had that confidence to say prosperity is indivisible. But what we've got to avoid is going to the other extreme of a real zero-sum world. And there's some tendencies in that direction, but I think we're nowhere near it. We have to avoid moving in a gradual, grinding way towards fragmentation and towards some breaking up of the world into blocks. It's a real risk. So what do we do using all the agency we have? The middle powers, India, ASEAN, Europe, Japan, the international institutions. What do we do in between those two extremes? Between the unattainable ideal of prosperity being indivisible and avoiding at all cost a zero-sum world. There's a lot we can do. There's a lot that we can do. But start from the reality that there are strengths in each of our nations, very well described. The US has a unique set of markets and institutions that drives innovation in a way that no other nation or region does. And as Christine says, Europe has human capital, and I mean it not just in terms of expertise, but in terms of values. It's a font of the values that we admire in today's world. Asia has a desire to keep opening up, to keep breaking barriers. Asia is still striking FTA deals. And we now have the UK joining the CPTPP, and there's several others on the waiting list. So build on these strengths, the desire on the part of most of the world to stay open, to be interdependent, so that we can all grow. So let's build a realistic basis for optimism, but starting from a position where people are despondent. And today's generation of parents has very little faith in their children doing as well as them. Let's build new bases for optimism.
I don't think you'd have any disagreement on this panel, though I wonder if you have spoken yet with President Trump, or your Prime Minister has. Have you shared this view of openness?
Well, no, I'm saying something which comes naturally to a small country. I know of other small countries that think alike, including small European countries. You know, being small helps because your basis for doing well in the world is to be relevant to the rest of the world. You never look inward, and you never get too complacent. You never get too complacent. You're always trying to find a way in which you're complementing someone else's strength, and someone else is able to complement your strength. But I don't think that should be the province of small countries alone. We have no choice but to have that cast of mind. I think it also has to be the way in which the major powers think. And in particular, I mean, if there was one real positive coming out of President Trump's speech yesterday evening here at the forum, it was the way he spoke about China and the US. It suggested a desire for a new understanding and a desire to avoid a continuous unraveling of a relationship that is still profoundly important for the global world economy.
Agree. Your Excellency, two important questions. So in that speech here at the forum, President Trump called on Saudi Arabia, specifically and OPEC, to lower oil prices. Will you do that?
So before I answer this question, I'm just going to comment on what was discussed. I'll get to your question.
I was going to move on to that as well.
But I'll get to your question. I think the way we look at the world is in two lenses. One is data-driven, to kind of explain to us why we're here, how we got here, where exactly we are. But also another lens that is more future-focused. What is the potential we need to unlock seriously? If you look at the first lens, like Christine said, there's tepid growth. But also at the same time, the same people talking about tepid growth, are talking about the potential positive promise of technological advancements and including generative AI. This economic stalemate needs to be addressed or disrupted. We can't stay here. Keeping our eye on the second lens, the vacuum is, like we've discussed probably throughout the past few days, is intrepid leadership. We need intrepid leadership that is bold but inclusive, disruptive but constructive, ingrained in the long view, like President Thurman said, but also action-oriented today to kind of get us out of where we are. And you see signs of hope or signs of signals that there are directions or momentum in the direction of more leadership that is required for us to get out of where we're from. Saudi Vision 2030 is an example of that. You talk about complacency, President Tharman. I think every day, day in, day out, complacency in Saudi is punched in the face by Saudi youth. We need to make this transformation count. And every region, every economy has its own issue to deal with, whether it's Europe and deregulation, for example, or innovation, the US and the fiscal outlook, China and this new economic model and whether a shift to consumption drive will happen, the Middle East and stability and the need for more Vision 2030s. I think there are some pressing questions that the globe needs to address too. And one of them is energy security or the energy transition. I don't think we can get or can afford not getting the energy transition story right this time. We need to get it right. Energy supply, energy security is essential for global growth, for global prosperity. The Kingdom's position, OPEC's position is all about long-term market stability to make sure that there's enough supply for the growing demand, and there is growing demand, whether it's the
Damn, I've been talking to myself. Holy shit. I hate when I do that. Oh my god. Sorry, y'all. Okay, I was talking to myself. We're taking an intermission. Lord! Oh, the software, bro. The software is killing me. Alright, so what I was trying to say, if you didn't hear me, you know what? I gotta put my monitors on, bro. I gotta put a monitor on because I can't do this all the time. Anyways, BRICS. BRICS is not at the table. BRICS is not at the table. So what I was trying to say, if you heard me, is that this conversation seems to be one-sided, okay? And what I mean by one-sided is that where is Africa? Where is China? Where is Russia? Yeah, we need energy. Shit, I had a whole diatribe. Oh my God. Y'all, I can't. You know what? I'm gonna see y'all in the next one. Let me catch up. Let me focus on the equipment. Because basically, yeah, there's a lot going on. As I said before, China, Russia is not at the table. Young man is letting us know we have to work together as a unit. We have to do things cohesively. It's important that we treat each other with respect and have high admirations, as it does pay off in the long run. If I can remember half the things I was saying. All I'm saying is, yes, the U.S. is becoming a global front in the market because they're leading in technology. And I say that because they're making notice that the U.S. has the driving force to move forward. But we're not talking about China. We're not talking about Russia. We're not talking about any of the other BRIC nations. And it's just like, yo, I thought this is a World Economic Forum. But if it's a World Economic Forum, where is the other world leaders? So I'm going to end on that note. I'm going to intermit on that note. And I'll be back to finish the rest of this. Hopefully with a proper mic. Y'all let me know how the sound was. Give thanks. I'll talk to y'all in a minute. Yeah.